What up, though? Welcome to another episode of 17 Winners. This is your brother Mike X.
It's your brother Sid Black.
And on this episode, man, I kind of want to start off, bro, talking about my week or my weekend.
Okay.
So, they had the expungement fair out there at the Breslin Center this weekend at MSU. We supposed to pre-register online. I pre-registered online. I found out that I did not qualify like the day before the event. Of course, I ain't qualified because of my felony history. My felony is too violent. I ain't been out long enough. They not doing nothing with these type of crimes.
Right.
All of those elements. So I kind of knew I wasn't qualified.
Right. But
for
you shoot your shot anyway.
I shot my shot anyway, and
Right.
I also wanted to go and get as much information as I can. And I'm glad I did because I did get some information. I even got somebody texted me in the middle or called me in the middle of the night, which is, brother, I'm old, man. I be going to sleep, brother. But yeah, a guy called me in the middle of the night trying to get some more information on the expungement fair. So what I do have for you, I did get some information on expungement. They did that event, but there is a website. So make sure y'all paying attention. I'm gonna add it to the credits, the description of this episode, but it is resources are available at mi.gov/ageexpunge. AGEXPUNGE. So let me repeat that. mi.gov/AGEXPUNGE. Go to that website. They will give you more information on how to line up for expungement because it's not an easy process. It ain't like signing a piece of paper and then you get expunged. Like you got to go through some qualifications. You got to send it through a motion. There's a few things you got to do, right? So they give you more resources there. And then there is actually an expungement fair. If you are in Michigan, in the Lansing, Michigan area, the Capital Area Michigan Works is doing an expungement job fair on Monday, February 6th, 2023. Now they're doing a job fair with like, not necessarily felon friendly, but people who are friendly to people who have backgrounds because it's about expungement. So of course it's about like not having the felony on your record anymore.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a job fair with employers who recognize that there once was something on your background. So that's Monday, February 6th, 2023.
Question real quick.
Yeah.
Because I'm not for sure, but I'm almost for sure. Unarmed robbery does not carry life, correct? It's not a floater that can go to life, correct?
Correct.
So thinking about the expungement process and everything that was going on yesterday, I had thoughts to myself like, dang, it's probably a bunch of cases where they didn't find any evidence of a weapon. And they had to take a plea to armed robbery with no weapon.
Right.
So not only do they not have evidence of you having a weapon for your case, but now when you take the cop, now they make sure that you don't have access to a weapon ever for the rest of your life.
Right, as a citizen.
As a citizen.
Man, that's crazy because that brings us kind of to the first topic of this episode, and that was the 13th Amendment conversation.
Yes, sir.
So lately, I have been hearing a lot of talk about the abolishment or the ending of the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Right. So for those who don't know, the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution reads, in part, neither slavery nor involuntary solitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So what that means is nobody should be legally enslaved in any state in the United States of America or anywhere where the United States of America has jurisdiction or control.
Ownership of a person.
Right. There's no such thing as ownership of a person in these United States. Unless, the caveat is unless you have been punished, or unless it's punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So if you have been convicted thereof a crime, you now have become subject to slavery again, essentially.
So criminal can equal slave, and prison can equal slavery.
Plantation life, basically. Yes,
exactly.
Sir. Essentially, yes, sir. So, yeah, So to kind of unpack that a little bit, one of the things that came up at the expungement rally was the right to vote. Now, most people think that once you have a felony, you don't have the opportunity to vote anymore because of
I thought that for a long
such
time.
of an amendment, the 13th Amendment, because at first we thought that it was about abolishing slavery, but it was really just reforming slavery, which we'll get into that in a second. But I did want to highlight some information that I got this weekend. One was a poster, both of these are posters that reflect being able to vote as felons, right? So this one is talking about some of the stipulations that you thought would stop you from being able to vote: previously incarcerated, you're on parole or tether or on probation, if you're in jail awaiting trial, or unstable housing, or you don't have a Michigan ID. None of those things should stop you from being able to vote, right?
Right.
Same over here. If you have misdemeanor or felony convictions on your record, you are currently on parole, probation, you haven't yet paid off all fines, fees, and restitution, or you are even in jail awaiting trial. That shouldn't stop you from having the right to vote, right?
Right.
So now, talking about this 13th Amendment, you ever read the book, The New Jim Crow?
No, not the complete book. No, I've read excerpts from the book. Yes.
All right, so I was in when I went to St. Louis. I went to St. Louis Institution, the level 1, for a couple years. Near the end of my bid, and I joined it was like a prison to college program where college students came into the prison and did a course from an actual college. So there was Central Michigan University. So we did this course. It was a sociology course.
Pretty much how we did with the mediation when they was coming in.
Yep.
And everything.
Kind of,
Gotcha.
yep. Kind of like that. Even I did the one at MSU where when we were at Jackson. Remember the MSU course at Jackson? That was criminal theory, I believe, course.
Something like that.
Or CJ. It was a CJ course. But the sociology course that I took at CMU, or through CMU at St. Louis, the main book for our class was that book, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, by Michelle Alexander, right? And in the book, she basically details all the parallels between slavery and the abolishment thereof, and the black codes that were immediately implemented as laws to basically make everything that we do as immediately freed slaves illegal in order to basically put us back into that same position, relegate us back into slavery even after we've been released freely, right?
Yep, I got down. There were laws governed just for African Americans. Their behavior of African Americans.
Yeah.
Is how they wrote it.
Yep, laws governed based on our behavior. Like it's like those Jim Crow laws were based on things that we would naturally have done based on not knowing anything else to do.
Yep.
So like if you could make it illegal to loiter, well, where the hell I'm gonna go? I don't own nothing. I don't have. There's no businesses that suit me or cater to me. There's no lounges or nowhere for me to go and be.
Right.
So therefore, I'm naturally going to what? Loiter. And in that, I'm going to be breaking the law, and therefore can be arrested, and therefore duly convicted of a crime, and therefore relegated back to slavery.
Back to the same position I just got out of.
Facts. Facts. So.
Which also translate into, as you know, we're going to talk about today and now.
Well, yes. Yeah, I mean, all of that came to me because I was thinking more along the lines of like PTSD and the effects of, because in the last episode we talked about the effect, I talked a little bit on the effects of slavery and how that connects to, you know, prison and the school to prison pipeline and all of that, right? So in thinking about it, I asked myself a question. Is PTSD like real or respected if it's self-inflicted? We see a lot in this day and time where people are recognizing symptoms, right?
Yes.
Now more than ever, people know what's wrong with them, so to speak. People, I'm bipolar, or I got PTSD, or I got this, that, and the other. People are really well able to diagnose what's going on with them, so they think.
Right.
And this is also for our generation and elders. We look at this newer, younger generation as like being a soft generation. Everything is kind of soft. Y'all crying about everything. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
oh, I got
Everything I
PTSD because
Right.
I was bullied in school. Like, I mean, that's kind of part of life. Everybody goes through something trying,
Right.
right? So,
But that does not mean that they do not have that.
So
at
that's
the same time. Right.
So that brings me back to the point, and that point is all trauma affects the way that a person lives, right?
Right.
At what point do you get to, or are we claiming PTSD unnecessarily? Because I mean, again, when you went to prison, you got yourself locked up. You sent yourself to prison.
Right.
It's your fault. But does that mean that the trauma that you experienced in that situation is not real or should not be helped to?
I don't believe so. I believe it means that we put ourselves in prison. We put ourselves in a circumstance, and we put ourselves to be subject to anything that the penitentiary puts on us. With that being said, the thing that everybody goes through things differently and as individuals. Say for me, for instance, I had to relearn how to talk to a child. How to deal with a person, how to deal with situations. Like, I don't know what level of anger to give something. I don't know if I should be a little mad or a whole lot of mad. And that is a part of PTSD coming from the penitentiary because I'm so used to handling situations with a certain level of anger.
So I just was talking about this the other night. I'm not a violent person.
At all. Right.
My history would say different. And people who maybe know me from certain parts of life would maybe say different. But those who know me like to the core know that I'm not like a violent person. I don't get angry and then do things or lash out or anything like that. But I am guilty of committing violent acts.
Yes.
But those violent acts are usually predicated on a belief system that I have.
Yes.
I believe that because you did this, this is what I'm supposed to do in response. And therefore I do it. But it's not, or I've done it, I should say. But it's not because I am personally a violent, like I ain't getting mad and say, oh, I'm just gonna hurt somebody.
Right.
No, I feel like I was wronged, and the only thing that I knew at the time to solve the issue was violence. So I executed violence in order to handle my business, in order to stand on my business that I thought was the right way to go.
Right. Because if you look at it, like, I've noticed, I thought back on myself, like, I didn't have to go as hard as I just went. I didn't have to yell at my son the way I just yelled at my son. Why did I get so upset? Why did I react like that? And it comes from being in the penitentiary and having to have that reaction. I can't actually think of many times where I've been put in a position to be upset in prison and I didn't react the way that I would each and every time. Pretty much. It was every single time it was that level of, man, what you do? Man, what?
Right.
That reaction is automatic. So now when I come home from prison and now something is awry or something isn't going right and I feel like I'm being played, or like you said, what'd you say? You feel like you're being wronged.
I'm being wronged.
In some type of way.
To me that they're not supposed to do.
Yep, it's my automatic reaction to react as if it was a penitentiary situation. Because I'm not thinking, it's automatic now. And that's a part of PTSD.
So I had a problem with stuff like that when I first came home. I was around my nieces and nephews who were like babies at the time.
Yep.
Like I think everybody was under, well, not the older ones, but like my brother's kids were little babies. and they would do stuff, and that shit would freak me out. Or when my stuff would be moved.
Right.
Stuff's not where I put it at.
Yeah.
That would make me so mad I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
Or like even when it came to technology, messing with computers, I would get mad and I would have to just stop. I would freeze up once I got to the point of frustration. I'll just freeze up and not be able to do anything because of being frustrated at that level. You feel me? So
I know exactly what you mean.
but yeah, I honestly question and the reason I question whether or not PTSD is respected when it's self-inflicted, or at least when it comes to us or prison people who go to prison, is because I don't see anything that like relates to PTSD for an individual
Coming out of prison.
Yeah, so yeah, because in general, people assume that you go to prison, they lock you up, they throw away the key, but the reality is, most of the people who go to prison come back home,
Absolutely.
and they come back to the neighborhood and the community that they left, or some similar neighborhood, and you're back dealing with these people who were already, to some degree, a deviant in society, could not be in society. Sent inside of a system full of other people who could not be in society, kept there for years, and then released into society again. And there's no real buffer or avenue of easing that process or making sure that the mentality of the individual coming home is right to be there. It's either I'm gonna flop you because you didn't answer the questions right, at least in Michigan. I'm gonna flop you because you didn't answer the questions right and I don't feel like it's time for you to go, or I'm gonna just let you go because you did answer the questions right and we feel like it's time for you to go. But like, how do you really determine whether or not a person has been mentally brought back to the societal level?
That's what I'm sitting there thinking about.
I mean, because even now I got my own stuff that I be dealing with.
Right. So do you think that it should be like a standard question or answer for every prisoner that's coming home?
No.
Or should prisoners be taught what exactly PTSD is before coming home to see if they recognize that they have that so they can seek the help? Like, in your opinion, what do you think?
I don't think I have a solution. I like the idea of being taught about PTSD though. I like the idea of like learning what the hell some of the signs of what you're dealing with are. Because like the worst case scenario, I can't speak for everybody who goes to prison and come home. But those of us who go to prison and come home with a mind of doing right. And staying out of prison, like there are certain things that we carry around that are scary, even though you're not doing, like the weight of the idea of going back to prison. You know what I'm saying? Even though you're not committing crimes, you're not in the streets, you're not doing nothing. But the idea that, man, what if something happened and I ended up going back? You know what I'm saying? That's a thing that a guy wake up, or just having a dream.
Absolutely.
Like I remember having so many dreams where I woke up in the dream world of my home or what I was dreaming about, and then looked up and I was looking at a white wall. You feel me? And out here, it's kind of the reverse, where I wake up expecting to be looking at a white wall sometimes. But I'm not looking at that wall. I'll be looking at my closet or whatever it is that I'm facing when I wake up. But I definitely still have that type of, thing that I go through when it comes to PTSD, I guess, with prison.
Do you believe that some of the things that come with PTSD when it comes from prison are also a positive instead of a negative, a plus instead of a minus?
I think that everything that was placed in us by God was placed in us to protect us.
Okay.
So therefore, fear being technically the motivating factor of PTSD, yeah, I believe some of it can protect you because, I mean, part of my PTSD is the habit of always paying attention to what's going on around me.
That's why I asked the
Making
question.
sure ain't nothing finna come up on me.
Yep.
So
Crowded
on one
rooms,
hand,
all of that.
yeah,
everything.
on one hand, I'm paranoid. But does my paranoia allow for me to make sure that I'm always straight? It does.
But it can also make you over paranoid and make you not, or maybe not you, but some people not follow through with some things.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts. So like the thing I think that differentiates like me or us or those of us who are able, because people like to look at a Mike X or a Sid or some of the more successful, like a Wallow or Boss Man Brewster. You would look at those type of guys and assume that this is like the rule.
Right.
And it's very much the exception.
Absolutely.
Most guys who have these type of things that they deal with are not able to articulate them, and more than articulate them, able to break them down and go through life. So that with PTSD being rooted in fear being a crippling emotion, a lot of guys won't make a move, or men and women who have been through that won't even make a move based on that fear.
Absolutely.
That PTSD becomes a thing that cripples them from being able to even try, to even step out of the shell of, whatever they are stuck in. So yeah, I definitely feel like, although it can be a positive for you, and fear is always,
How did you yourself handle coming out, being in crowds, not really knowing? Because how many jobs you have before you got locked up?
Maybe two.
Maybe 2 jobs. So how did you deal with just the unknown, the fear of the unknown? Like, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna get a job here? Am I gonna do this? Am I gonna do that? Because coming home, we really couldn't get any jobs. Every job that I've had since I've been out of the penitentiary, I've had a way in. I've had a lookout. I've never gotten a job on my own since prison, post-prison.
So you've never like had to go and put in a resume and application and just have a good interview and get a job? All your jobs came through somebody else?
I've done it, but I didn't get the job.
Yep,
I did not get the job.
Straight up.
And some people have told me because of your record, or you haven't been out of prison long enough. Employers have actually told me that.
Straight up.
Yeah, every single job I've had, I had an in. Every single one.
See, so that's not my experience. My experience is I interview well. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I interview well. So in my interviews, I always get the job. I think I've only gotten maybe 1 job with an N since I've been home.
And now, but when I think about it as well, your jobs came in Dallas and after Dallas, correct?
Kinda.
Because the ones you had when you first came out, you had an N at the bakery.
Well,
one of the ones.
I was just gonna say that's the only job I had with an N.
Right.
But I had the one job. When I first got out, I had the job. Remember, I was going way out. I was getting up early in the morning and going way out, doing like landscaping for like big landscaping.
Yup.
Now I was getting cheese. That was what's crazy.
I remember that.
I made my first little $1,000. Remember, every paycheck I used to buy me a bottle of champagne.
Yep.
Every paycheck, every single paycheck I got for at least my first couple months home, I'm buying me a bottle of champagne. I'm buying me a bottle of.
I forgot about that job.
What was that? The Rick Ross champagne.
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
Belvedere, Bel Air, Bel Air.
Bel Air.
I was buying me a bottle of Bel Air every paycheck when I first got home. Off of that, I stacked my first $1,000 off that job, legit money. And I was real proud of that job. I got the hookup at the bakery when me and you was working at the bakery out there in East Lansing.
Yep.
But then, yeah, I moved to Texas, and yeah, they wasn't really tripping. And I interviewed well,
Right.
and I worked well.
Yep.
I had a good work ethic. So after my first job, I was kind of off and running because every other job I've had after that, you know, they always vouched for me. So I had a plan though coming
Right.
home. I prepared to be able to interview well. I would go through and read books on interviews, and like it was one class that I had in there that like was ran by another inmate, another prisoner, and it was about being able to interview, do
Right.
job interviews, and do your
Right. We both
parole
went through that.
interview. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we
was a
both went through all
parole
that.
interview. Yep, because we
Right.
taught the classes afterwards.
Absolutely.
So it
And
was
plus,
like,
if you can, there's no more crucial interview in your life than going through the
trying to talk
parole
your way
interview.
about the penitentiary.
Yeah. There's no more. That is the most
If
important
you
interview
talking
in
your
your
way
life.
about it that interview, then you straight.
Yeah, then you straight.
So yeah, I actually have interview well, and I got a good work ethic that follows me. So that's how I was able to get jobs. But what I will say is this: my personal struggle has not been with working; it has been in housing. In Dallas, they was like ruling me completely out with a felony. There was no apartment that I could get to in Dallas that they was letting me in with a felony. And then I didn't know anybody enough to be able to get it in with like
Right.
a personal landlord. So Dallas, I ain't have no luck. My first apartment, I had to get it in my mom's name,
Right.
and I just stayed there. Up here in Michigan, since I've been home, kind of the same thing, except for there is housing available. If you have felonies, they'll let you rent from some people, and it's more likely that I'm able to find an in. But it's usually like slumlords. It's
Right.
usually like some shit you don't want to live in.
Right.
Like, damn, this the best you can do for me?
And they're getting better at helping the people with housing, like we had on the last episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Offender success programs, stuff like that. There are programs that are coming together, but even in that, those programs are for people that are like coming home and are on parole with no assistance or don't have any family members. For those of us who have some support or are able to make some things happen, we still kind of, it's almost the same barrier as like a woman who is struggling right above the Section 8 level, where she makes too much money to get Section 8, she makes too
Right.
much money to get food stamps, she makes too much money to get assistance with health care, daycare, and that type of thing. But she don't make enough money to do nothing else.
To do nothing else. Right.
You know what I mean? So like
Right.
it's kind of like that when it comes to the housing scenario here for me. It's like I can do enough there's enough to be done, like with especially with the guys coming home from prison or guys who have a little bit of access. Like we have enough access to not be able to get all of the benefits of not having no access, but I don't have enough to be able to actually do nothing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If I'm not as resourceful as I am and able to find things the way that I am, then I'm in trouble.
Nah, facts.
And that's the thing. That's why I like to state that like I'm the exception, not the rule.
Right.
Because although you might look at me and say, "See, no,
We've
he's
seen more
straight,"
fumble than
we
not.
see more fumble than not. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of guys out there that need more help, who don't get the help or can't get the help. So that's kind of where that I stand on that one.
What do you think, did your PTSD affect you like emotionally, how you emotionally deal with people, how you process things emotionally?
I don't know. I'm not sure if PTSD has played a part in that for me because I'm just now getting to the point where I'm even discussing or having any real ideals about it. It wasn't until the podcast I started to have these type of conversations around the experience of prison that I even started considering PTSD a thing because I've always been of the mentality of suck it up, keep it moving.
Right.
So, like, what you mean you got PTSD or you're stressed or you're depressed or like what? Like, what do you mean?
Because in the penitentiary, we are pretty much not forced to, but we don't deal with emotion like that. Like we don't put ourselves in those shoes and hold on to the things that's going on outside of that gate too much.
I mean, because
that
you
it
can't.
affects us, because you can't.
You can't. I mean, if we're talking about like PTSD, you when dealing with the panic attacks, the stress while you was in prison. Like, talk about that a little bit, being away from your son, going to the joint.
Yep. Like for me, I was a little I was not little. I was a whole lot emotionally unbalanced in there. Like, I went to prison when my son was 2 months old, and I got sentenced to 14 to 40 years. So he was gonna be 14 years old when I come home. During my incarceration, I was seeing my son probably every weekend for the first 6, 7 years that I was incarcerated. My mother was bringing him up. And then when my mother moved, I was no longer able to see my son.
On a regular basis?
Right. And me seeing him and me getting those visits and seeing my mother was the emotional part of me that comes out.
Okay.
You know, where I am the most vulnerable.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when that's taken away, and now I have nothing to bring that out, now I'm consistently being the prison and having the prison emotion and being in the mindset of being a prisoner the whole time. Because you know, like I know when you go on visits, that's your break.
That's your way out.
That's your escape.
Yeah.
So dealing with that my last 7 years and not really opening up too much or being too emotional and having to deal with that coming home, transitioning into home, I still carried that with me. So when people ask me, you know, what's going on with you, how you doing, they have genuine concern and genuine care, and I just shut down like, no, I got it. I still do that to this day. Nobody really knows what's going on with me unless they ask me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not too forthcoming with how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I don't
what
know that
I'm
I'll tell
doing.
you that either. I won't tell nobody that even when they ask me exactly what's going on. It's really hard to say
It's
exactly
really
what's
hard.
going on.
Yeah, it's hard to pull out of me what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that comes from the lack of trust and the lack of giving it and going so many years and repetitive of, nah, I'm keeping this. I'm dealing with this.
Yeah, because you got to deal with it.
Because you have to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, it stressed me out to the point so much that before I actually got to the point where I was able to deal with it, I started having heart problems and stress problems, stress going up and down, making trips to the hospital, trips back from the hospital, walking around with a heart monitor, you know, running on the treadmill doing a stress test because I didn't know how to handle things. You know, my life got, people don't understand when you go through something at a young age. Before the penitentiary, we did the same thing every day.
Right.
Every single day. We knew what was going on. Boom, we get to the penitentiary, we're doing the same thing every single day. We know what's going on. Then when that thing get flipped, you're going to go through some type of cycle. You're going to go through something. It's all about if you know how to handle it and let it go, or if it's going to affect you in the wrong way. For me, that separation affected me in the wrong way. I didn't know what to do. You know, I didn't know where to find how to fill that void. So until I figured it out and figured out how to kick it and be like, you know what, I'm straight, I'm good, it's all in my head. No, we not taking no pills. They trying to force you to the med line. We not doing it. You're not making me no zombie, man. What? I'm straight. And I had to force myself to suck it up and figure out ways to deal with it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, so honestly, I was going to take the PTSD a little bit further, but because we have so much more to unfold about it.
Yeah, it's a big bag. That's a big bag.
I think I'm going to hold it for the next episode.
Okay.
And we're going to cut it for here because we got a lot to drop on them this episode.
Yeah.
So let's end it for now. We appreciate y'all for tuning in to 17 Winners Podcast.
Yes, sir.
Make sure y'all tap in for the next episode coming real soon. Free to real.
Free to real. Okay, yeah, that's a big bad unpack.